Hello, welcome to another CISSP study hour. Today we're going to be going through, as we always do, the Quizlet official ISC squared questions and answers, trying to get a better understanding of CISSP, what it takes to pass the exam. Really want to encourage people to try to answer questions in the chat like we do every week. We try to pick out someone who does the best, in a very loose sense of things, the best answering questions and getting up to speed. And we send them a Yeti mug, courtesy of our sponsor, Varonis. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Three different sections today. Domain 8, software development. Domain 7, security operations, and Domain 6, security assessment. I don't know if we'll get through all of these, but we'll give it a go. And let's go ahead and get started. So here we go. This takes advantage of the dependency on the timing and events that take place in a multitasking operating system. So I think this is a time-based attack or time of compute attack, maybe. Yeah. Hey, John, welcome. So let me fix this window over here so I can see chat better. So, all right. Time of check versus time of use attacks. So these are always really interesting, any kind of time-based attacks. You see that a lot with web-based attacks because there's a lot larger gaps between things happening. So you can see if, people have visited sites before or use it for fingerprinting or things. So, 8 bits here. Lots of people, hello. All right. Information about data is metadata, which isn't shocking. I hope everyone knows that. Next. All right. A mathematical, statistical, and visualization method of identifying valid and useful patterns in data. Mathematical, statistical, and visualization method? Graphing? Visualization method. Projection? Knowledge, discovery, and databases. That sounds like one of those things that's too academic for me, but okay. Knowledge, discovery, and databases. All right. The level of confidence that software is free from vulnerabilities, either intentionally designed into the software or accidentally inserted at any time during its life cycle, and that it functions in the intended manner. Level of confidence, maturity, maybe security maturity is the answer. Software assurance, I suppose. All right. All right, a formal, methodical, comprehensive process for establishing a baseline of the IT environment and each of the assets within that environment. I think this is maybe an audit, a formal, methodical, comprehensive product. Let's see. All right, sorry, I'm just fighting with the chat here. Configuration management. So now the CISSP makes a very clear distinction between configuration management and change management. I think that's where I'm getting caught up here. So configuration management, a baseline assets within that environment. And I guess, what's frustrating here is that, if you think of it as just identifying the assets, that sounds a lot more like an audit. But if you're actually figuring out what the configuration of those assets is, it sounds like configuration management. Okay. A program written with functions and intent to copy and disperse itself without the knowledge and cooperation of the owner or user of the computer. I think this is a virus. Computer virus. Yeah. Functions intent to copy and disperse itself. I think this is the key here, the disperse itself. That it's the distribution of this. Because there's lots of other, types of malware that don't do that. I think that's the real difference here to keep in mind. A decision-making technique that is based on a series of analytical techniques taken from the fields of mathematics, statistics, cybernetics, and genetics. This seems like a lot. Decision-making technique, cybernetics. It's based on a series of analytical techniques. Data-driven decision making, data mining. I wouldn't have even said that's decision making. Data mining, that just seems like collecting of data without the analysis. But okay. An information flow that is not controlled by a security control and has the opportunity of disclosing confidential information. Not controlled by security. So unregulated, vulnerability. And I guess trying to, like, so much of the CISSP in terms of the questions is distinguishing between two very similar things. And so here I'm breaking this out into two things. So there's the uncontrolled security control and then disclosing confidential information, where you can imagine it's uncontrolled, but there's no confidential information, or vice versa. So I think this is maybe a severe vulnerability or critical vulnerability. A covert channel. Covert channel. Well, as we've all seen, the CISSP makes us all feel silly. So that's what I'm feeling here. All right. The collection of all the hardware, software, and firmware within a computer system that contains all elements of the system responsible for supporting the security policy and the isolation of objects. I think these are all the security controls, hardware and firmware. Trusted computing bases. All right. A Microsoft high-level interface for all kinds of data. So Microsoft has a bunch of these. So there's like ActiveX, there's Corba, yeah, probably one of those. ActiveX data objects. Okay. All right. A set of standards that addresses the need for interoperability between hardware and software products. I think this is Corba, Common Object Request Broker Architecture. A record of actions and events that have taken place on a computer system. Yeah, 8-bit saying, yeah, I feel dumb this morning. So, all right, a log. Well, finally an easy one, a layup. So, all right. A development model in which each phase contains a list of activities that must be performed and documented before the next phase begins. I think this is waterfall development methodology. All right. Maturity model focused on quality management processes and has 5 maturity levels that contain several key practices within each maturity level. I think this is CMM, capability maturity model. I was having trouble thinking of what the C stood for. Capability maturity model for software CMM. All right. A suite of application programs that typically manages large structured sets of persistent data. I think this is database. We're knowing these questions like database control system, database management system, DBMS. All right. Describes the relationship between the data elements and provides a framework for organizing the data. So I think this is data structure, data relationships, data framework, relationship, database model. Relationship between. Yeah, this is a little frustrating because there are these like big frameworks like UML and things and other ones that describe like in a very enterprise architecture way what the relationships are between data. And then, the data model, I would think, is actually the instantiation, is sort of executing on what that more abstract model is, where UML, or these other data modeling languages would say just that, there is a user object and that user object has these fields and then it has many, say you're modeling somewhat like a landlord-tenant relationship. So a landlord has many dwellings and in those dwellings there's many individuals. And so that's the abstract model. But a database model actually, bakes that into things where it says like, okay, we have a table here, and in that table, it has a primary key that is then the foreign key in this other table, and it fits together. Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a database that is then connected to something like a NoSQL, sort of like Redis. and that all the tenants are actually in Redis, but all the landlords are actually in the Postgres database. You have these different systems. So, okay. All right, they got tiny type. Management technique that simultaneously integrates all essential acquisition activities through the use of multidisciplinary teams to optimize the design, manufacturing, and supportability processes. Management technique? I think this is procurement management. Integrated product and process development. 8-bit saying I need to learn more about databases. I don't know. I've done a lot of development work, so I know more about it from that side, but still. Integrated product and process development. Okay. Allows the operating system to provide well-defined and structured access to processes that need to use resources according to a controlled and tightly managed schedule. Operating system provide well-defined and structured. Happy to take a big detour into databases. That would at least be something I know about. So, all right. Operating system to define the well-defined access to processes. Controlled and time. Is it process management? Time multiplexing. Oh, okay. Time multiplexing. All right, an approach based on lean and agile principles in which business owners and the development operations and quality assurance departments collaborate. I think this is agile methodology, DevOps. Start slapping some Kubernetes on this. Okay, so that was Domain 8 software development, which, some of this is a little antiquated, but that's what we're working with. Okay. Now, on to Domain 7, security operations. Okay, a formal, methodical, comprehensive process for requesting, reviewing, and approving changes to the baseline of the IT environment. So, configuration management, change management. Approving, it says changes right in here, so I should have thought of it, but change management. If anyone knows the exact slice difference between change management and configuration management and could throw it in chat, that would be very good. Comprehensive process. Okay, a formal, methodical, a baseline of the IT environment. This is configuration management. So I'm going to go with the baseline as the difference, but someone else has a better idea. All right. Machines that exist on the network but do not contain sensitive or valuable data and are meant to distract and occupy malicious or unauthorized intruders means a delay. Number of machines linked together. A network of some are referred to as a honey net. So this is a honey pot. Honey nets. If you have to put in a ticket before you do it, it's change management. I suppose that is true. Honey nets. Okay. A solution that monitors the environment and automatically recognizes malicious attempts to gain unauthorized access. So this is monitored access, tripwires. That would be neat to make a honeypot with a pie. I'm trying to remember the name. It was a really interesting company that made virtual honeypots, and I think they're essentially Linux systems, but they would expose, a Windows file system, or they'd expose something that looked like a Mac on the network. And then, they weren't vulnerable, but they could, still be ticked off in the same way and throw off alerts and things. Monitors the environment. Intrusion detection system. Hey, everyone jumping in with IPS and IDS. Joseph? But I don't think IPS, because that'd be prevention system. It would have to actually stop them versus just detecting that it occurred. I don't think Joseph Gomez, I don't think it's a SIM, because it's not just collecting the data. I mean, your IDS would be pumping the data over to a SIM so you could then sort out what was happening. So, all right. A solution that monitors the environment and automatically takes action when it recognizes malicious attempts to gain unauthorized access. Oh, this is the prevention system. See? It's not, in a practical sense, you're not wrong about IPS and IDS. It's just the CISSP makes this distinction. All right. Oh, these excuses, 8-bit. I'm sick of it. All right. The practice of having personnel become familiar with multiple positions within the organization as a means to reduce single points of failure and to better detect insider threats. I was going to say multiple points of failure. That's probably not what you want. Personnel, I think rotation, role rotation, job rotation. Yeah. All right. The practice of only granting a user the minimal permissions necessary to perform their explicit job function. The least privilege, implementation of least privilege. Yeah, least privilege. All right. Any object that contains data. This is danger, just dangerous. Any object that contains data. Data source, media. Interesting term. I don't think a JSON blob would be called media, but hey. All right. Primarily associated with organizations that assign clearance levels to all users and classification levels to all assets, restricts users with the same clearance level from sharing information unless they are working on the same effort, entails compartmentalization. Structured access? Need to know. All right. A raid technique. I don't know if anyone's actually seen Raid or Raid Redemption. Great movies. All right. Yeah, 8-bit got need to know. RAID technique. Logical mechanism used to mark striped data, allow recovery of missing drives by pulling data from adjacent drives. So, RAID 5? RAID 5? Parity bits. Parity bits? That doesn't sound accurate. Okay. All right. An update fix for an IT asset. Patch Tuesday? Patch. All right. An isolated test environment that simulates the production environment but will not affect production components. This is staging? Sandboxing? That is not sandboxing. Only because, you can... Sandboxing is keeping things separate. But that could also happen in a production environment, to be described that way. In saying striped RAID is parodied. Yeah, a striped RAID is parodied, but I don't think that's parity bits. I mean, that's the individual aspect of the data. That's not the RAID technique, if that makes sense. At least that's how I was thinking of it. But you can imagine, if you have multiple VMs on one system, they're sandboxed from each other. It may still be a production system or, any of the other isolation techniques. All right. Next, the practice of ensuring that no organizational process can be completed by a single person forces collusion as a means to reduce insider threats. I feel like there's a joke about multi-factor authentication, but it's, multiple person authentication. We're ensuring that no separation of duties. That doesn't sound like separation of duties either. Can we just go ahead and I hate all these questions? Separation of duties would mean that there's more like a responsibility, like single responsibility principle. But yeah. Okay, RAID technique, writing a data set across multiple drives. Non-parity bits, striping. Data set across multiple drives. So this would be RAID 1, where it just makes things faster but not more redundant. So, all right, batteries that provide temporary immediate power during times when utility serves. UPS, uninterruptible power supplies. Nice work. Hey, maybe it's not so bad. Okay. We're actually cruising through stuff today. We may need to do another one or two here. All right. So what domain is this? This is domain 6, security assessment. Oh, Mike chiming in with UPS. Determines that your application works as expected. Testing? Positive testing. Yeah, I guess negative testing would be that it works as you don't expect. All right, involves having external agents run scripted transactions against a web application. Penetration test? Synthetic performance monitoring. Okay. A process by which developers can understand security threats to a system, determine risk from those threats, and establish appropriate mitigations. Security audit? Threat modeling. Determine risks and establish. I think what pushes this beyond it for me is this establish appropriate mitigations, which goes beyond threat modeling. I mean, the threat modeling is the first two aspects of this, but this establish appropriate mitigations doesn't really seem like threat modeling. Overt testing can be used with both internal and external testing. When used from an internal perspective, the bad actor simulated is an employee of the organization. The organization's IT staff is made aware of the testing and can assist the assessor in limiting overt security testing. All right. The fire drill of security testing. Analysis of the application source code for finding vulnerabilities without executing the application. This is static analysis. Static source code analysis. Yeah. All right. Abstract episodes of interaction between a system and its environment. Abstract episodes of interaction between a system and its environment. I don't really know what they mean by abstract. Use cases. They couldn't have thrown the word modeling in there. Abstract episodes. All right. Use cases. All right. This criteria requires sufficient test cases for all program loops to be executed for 0, 1, 2, or many iterations covering initialization, typical running, and termination boundary conditions. I feel like this is a code coverage. Criteria requires sufficient test cases. Loop coverage. Okay. All right. Paperwork involving deadly force encounters. That seems like a good joke. I don't know which one it was going to, but welcome, Paladin Grand Pelotas. I hope I was pronouncing your name right. It sounds cool, like you're part of the 40K universe. All right. Design that allows one to peek inside the box and focuses specifically on using internal knowledge of the software to guide the selection of test data. Inside the box. So it's not black box testing. Open box testing? White box testing. They're really too focused on the color of the boxes here. All right. A use case from the point of view of an actor hostile to the system under design. This is a threat? Threat model? Misuse case. Oh, for pizza. Use cases and misuse cases. All right. Performed to simulate the threats that are associated with external adversaries. While the security staff has no knowledge of the covert test, the organization management is fully aware. Covert security testing versus open. All right. This criteria requires sufficient test cases for each feasible data flow to be executed at least once. Data flow coverage. Considered to be the minimal level of coverage for most software products, but decision coverage alone is insufficient for high integrity. This decision branch coverage. All right. An approach to web monitoring that aims to capture and analyze every transaction of every user of a transaction monitoring? Real user monitoring. Every user. This criteria requires sufficient test cases for each feasible path, basis path from start to exit of a defined program segment to be executed at least once. This is segment coverage, path coverage. 8-bit saying, yeah, rum. Why is that considered real user testing? I get that if it's like one person goes through, like, okay, that's a real user test. I don't understand if it's every user in every conceivable circumstance. Like, that seems like a full system test or something. And the system, all right, so while that goes out, I'm going to go back to reading. When the system under test is executed and its behavior is observed. Observational testing? Dynamic testing. Okay, this is worded weirdly, but this is in contrast to the previous static code analysis versus dynamic code analysis. Okay. Ensures the application can gracefully handle invalid input or unexpected user behavior. There's quality assurance, edge case testing, negative testing. Gracefully handle invalid input or unexpected use. I hate these terms. Okay. This criterion requires sufficient test cases for each program statement to be executed at least once. However, its achievement is insufficient to provide confidence. Branch statement coverage. This is kind of interesting because you can imagine scenarios where, say there's like 3 modules in a system. They each do the right thing on their own, but together, someone was asking what domain we're studying. We are studying security assessment and testing. So imagine there's 3 modules. They're each functioning okay on themselves, but overall, what's being put out is still wrong. And there's been like lots of real world, aspects of that. Like there was a horrible case, like one of the big one that's brought up about like people being killed by software bugs, but it was like an X-ray scanner, and individually each treatment that it provided was okay, but it didn't account for like overlaps, and so the overlaps are what actually hurt people, and people died from it. So it makes sense that it's stated this way. I'm just trying to bring like a little bit of real world to this because it's so abstract. All right. Different security methods find different vulnerability types. Heterogeneous testing, attack surface. That doesn't seem like the right term, but okay. All right. This criteria requires sufficient test cases to exercise all possible combinations of conditions in a program decision. Coverage? Multi-condition coverage. All right. This criteria requires sufficient test cases for each condition in a program decision to take on all possible outcomes at least once. It differs from branch coverage only when multiple conditions must be evaluated. Multi-branch coverage? Condition coverage. Testing where no internal details of the system implementation are used. Black box testing? There we go. Okay. All right. That was all of our stuff. It's only been a half hour though. This build is like a whole hour. So I'm going to go in and find, I'm not reading anything. I'm going to go back to where we started. I was just trying to work us through this. Here we go. We'll just do CISSP. We'll just pick up another domain. Here's one. All right, there's 1,300 questions. So that should probably be enough for the next, half an hour. So holds, let me make this bigger. All right, holds individuals accountable for their actions. Accountability? All right. All right, thanks, 8-bit. See you later. Have a good weekend. Okay. OECD Privacy Guideline Principle, which states individuals shall have the right to challenge the content of any personal data being held and have a process for updating their personal data if found to be inaccurate or incomplete. The right to, so I think this is a right. I don't think it's right to refusal. I think it's right to data integrity, accountability principle, privacy guideline principle, which states Accountability principle. All right. Second canon of the ISC2 Code of Ethics. Act honorably, justly, responsibly, and legally. All right. I don't think I know any of these. This is great. Not that I'm glad I don't know, but this is good studying for me. All right. Law enacted by government agencies, regulatory law. Regulations? Administrative law. Okay. Fourth canon of the ISC2 Code of Ethics. Advance and protect the profession. All right. Private citizens carrying out actions on the behalf of law enforcement. Citizen law? Agents of law enforcement. Private citizens. The real ZAM. I'm not lecturing you on ethics. I'm trying to teach you what the rules are so you can pass this test and then go back to your ethic breaking ways. The 3 security principles: availability, integrity, which isn't spelled correctly, which is kind of funny for the word integrity, and confidentiality. Usually this is said the other way, CIA, because it's easier to remember. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The AIC triad. See, that's like a gang from somewhere else. All right. The cost of loss due to a risk over a year. Penalty? Average loss? Annualized loss expectancy. That makes sense. So, all right. A dollar amount that estimates the loss potential from a risk in a span of a year. Single loss expectancy times the annualized rate. Annualized loss expectancy. All right. The value that represents the estimated possibility of a specific threat taking place within a 1-year time frame. So this is annualized risk rate, maybe? Annualized rate of occurrence. All right. Software designed to prevent and detect malware infections. Anti-malware software? Antivirus software? This one's kind of weird. Well, I guess it just says malware. But I'm thinking of things like, there's a lot of other systems that are designed to detect these things that aren't antivirus systems. Like if you think of like, data loss prevention tools, there's a lot of systems now that just like analyze network traffic, trying to prevent and detect these infections due to their behaviors on the network. Those aren't really antivirus, but, still in the court of things. Number of losses suffered per year. Annualized loss rate? Annualized rate of occurrence. That doesn't seem right. An attempt to bypass security controls in a system with the mission of using that system or compromising it. An attack is usually accomplished by exploiting a current vulnerability. This is an attack? I would think so. Proof of an identity claim. So this is authentication? Yeah. Actions an individual can perform in a system. These are authorization. I think I'd throw in allowed. Are granted the right to perform, not just that they can perform. The value of a protected asset. Asset value. The reliability and accessibility of data. And resources to authorize identified individuals in a timely manner. This is availability. Yeah. Assures information is available when needed. Availability. All right. Security control designed to change user behavior. This is modification control. Awareness. Okay. So awareness changes user behavior. Verification of a person's background and experience, also called pre-employment screening, background check. Yeah. Uniform ways to implement and safeguard an administrative control. Baseline. Uniform ways to implement safeguard. I'd say the starting place for controls is maybe a better way to think about it. A minimum level of security necessary to support and enforce a security policy. Well, security and support. Baseline. Man, just loving the baseline. I'm going to shuffle these. Here we go. A penetration test where the tester is provided with inside information. So this is an open test. Full knowledge test. All right. Non-discretionary access control to find upper and lower bounds implemented by the system. Non-discretionary access control. Limits? Lattice-based access controls. Upper and lower bounds. TCP flag, synchronize a connection. SYN, ACK and SYN, synchronize a connection. All right. WRT, the time required to configure our custom. Recovery time, work recovery time. Work recovery time. Okay. Requires financial institutions to protect the confidentiality and integrity of consumer financial information. Regulations? Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. This is one of those where I was thinking of this was an abstract thing, and it didn't say like which, regulation. But all right. An operation that results in the flow of information from a subject to an operator. Data flow? A right. The flow of information from a subject to an object. Okay. All the protection mechanisms within a computer system, software, hardware, and firmware that are responsible for enforcing a security policy. Protection, these are the controls. Trusted computing base. Man, I'm really bad at trusting computer base. All the protection mechanisms. All right. Denial of service attack, which uses a spoofed SYN packet and includes the victim's IP address as both source and destination. Ping of death? A land attack. Okay. Adds additional criteria beyond identification and authentication. The actual content the subject is attempting to access. So, authorization? Content-based authorization? Content-dependent access controls. All right. Hacker activist, someone who attacks computer systems for political reasons. A hacktivist. Powered RFID tags that can operate via large distances. Active RFID. Okay. Versus passive RFID, which makes sense. Restricted access gate used at an airport or prison. It's a physical access control. It's a class 4 gate. Okay. Used to monitor network devices. SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. There's a lot that can be used to monitor network devices. But yes, SNMP is used. A set of known bad resources, such as IP addresses, domain names, or applications. A blacklist? Yeah. Converts a cipher text into plain text. A decoder? Decryption? All right. Maximum tolerable downtime. This is MTD. Okay. Kerberos credentials encrypted with the TGS's key. This is the ticket. Ticket granting ticket. Tickets granting tickets. It's sad on here. Kerberos credentials encrypted with the ticket. Okay. Data that authenticates. I think it's supposed to be data. Data that authenticates a Kerberos principal's identity is the ticket. Okay. C. Counter. I don't know what these are. All right. Network cabling that has an inner copper core separated by an insulator with a metallic braided shield. I think this is coax. Coaxial cable. All right. System that has the necessary controls to ensure that the security policy will not be compromised and that can process a range of sensitive or classified information. Secure system? Trusted computing system. All right. A Kerberos service which grants access to services. Ticket granting service. All right. Permanent virtual circuit, a circuit that is always connected. PVC. All right. SAN protocol that allows for leveraging existing networking infrastructure and protocols to interface with storage. SAN protocol. iSCSI. Internet SCSI. Maximum transmission unit, the maximum PDU size, packet data unit. Maximum. Okay. Cryptographic device invented by Thomas Jefferson that used multiple wheels along with an entire alphabet along the ridge. Jefferson disks. Sounds like an Enigma machine. Okay, I'm going to go to 35 questions, and we'll get out of them. All right, a cryptographic algorithm is a hash function? A cipher. Jumping the gun there. The process of determining which portions of a standard will be employed by an organization. Which portions of a standard? This is application? Scoping. Okay. Allows a legitimate purchaser of copyrighted material to sell it to another person. This is copyright transfer? First sale doctrine. Okay. A ROT3 substitution cipher. The Caesar cipher. It has been a long time since I studied these. All right. Granting subjects the minimum amount of authorization required. Least privilege. Principle of least privilege. OECD privacy guideline. Personal data should be reasonably protected against authorized use, disclosure, alteration. Principle of data control. Security safeguards principle. All right. Security protection mechanisms that are hardware or software retrofitted to a system to increase add-on security. All right. C octave. Operationally critical threat assessment and vulnerability evaluation. Gosh. All right. I'm going to do a couple more because I'm just burning through these because I wasn't sure about them. Cipher feedback. A stream mode DES that is similar to block mode CBC. Cipher feedback. Sounds like a solid snake character. All right. Symmetric key encryption algorithm that was adopted by the government as a federal standard for protecting sensitive, unclassified information. DES was later replaced with AES. DES, Data Encryption Standard. All right, everyone. It's Friday. I think that's going to be good for us. There's a lot of questions. I think I'm going to try to do some other system for next week if I have time that lets us be more interactive or something. I keep trying to do that. It's just a lot of work to get it set up, but I think it'd be useful. Maybe that can actually be the stream, is building that kind of system. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good weekend. All right. Have a good day. Bye.